It's always good fun. Then I guess some research. So most of my research in high school was on CS, ML, and my current research is still on decentralized finance. And I think the best thing to do with research is always to start early, because the research process is a long process. And a project done quickly, it's very noticeable, it's very shallow in depth, and when you're applying, you can't really elaborate on it. I feel like something good of research is just to become a subject matter expert. That's the point of doing research. And I think overall, here we have a good amount of resources. You have UB, you have Roswell, you have ECC, you have these local universities and these research centers where you can try to leverage some connections, find people, even cold email, and just talk to people and try to get those connections to do research. And I think, when you pick your topic, I guess it is important. These top colleges, they're all what's considered liberal arts schools. So I guess you do want your research to have some kind of applicable social impact, something you can write on, elaborate on, and something that you can show you have some social impact. So these colleges care a lot about how you're going to impact their community and their surrounding community. And I guess if you want to present your work, these are some of the major areas to present your work. There's ISEF, STS. STS is limited to high school seniors, and ISEF is open to anyone. And the ISEF Regional Fair is the Western New York Science Fair. That runs in about March or April, somewhere around then, or February. It's early winter. You have SDL, which is another one where you submit a paper. Junior Science, JSHS, that's another one. It's very similar to ISEF. And you also have New York State Science Congress for those who perform better in regional fairs. And if you're looking to publish your research, I guess some good places for high schoolers, if it's a bit more elementary, International Journal for High School Research is good. And if you have some more in-depth research working with professors, you can definitely present to an IE journal, a Nature journal, or Journal of Medicine. Those are all pretty good. These are a bit more prestigious, these three. But there's a bunch, IE also does a bunch of conferences. So if you're doing something more CS math, you can also present in conferences. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Any questions? If you want to copy the slides, there's a link. Take a picture. I tried to make it QR code, except all those weren't free. That was my email. Any questions?
So the next presenter is Raymond. She goes to Yale University.
You did such a good job. You got max kudos in the game.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Raylin Liu, and I went to Williamsville East High School. I am currently a freshman at Yale University. So I think, in my opinion, there are four main tenets of a college application. So it's your academic scores, like SAT, ACT, GPA stuff. You have the extracurriculars. You have the there's the essay, and then you have like leadership positions in like clubs and stuff, which kind of ties into extracurriculars, but you'll see. So I have a couple of tips for these scores, and I feel like the score stuff is kind of, ad nauseum, impressed on everybody in school, so I won't belabor this point too much. So you should kind of know what range of GPA you're angling for quite early, like freshman year, maybe early sophomore year at the very latest, and kind of know your own limits and what kinds of classes you should be taking. Because oftentimes, my experience was that oftentimes it was better to take a class that, especially when the class doesn't align with my intended path of study, to take a class that wasn't necessarily as hard, but that I could still do well in and be reasonably challenged by. This is what I did with English classes. I was not intending to major in English or writing or anything like that, so I took a load off in terms of English so I could focus more on STEM classes and more extracurriculars that I could do. Another big part of the scores is the SAT and the ACT. This is always good to take multiple times if you're not happy with your score per se, but you shouldn't be angling for like perfect score all the time. That's kind of defeats the purpose of the test itself. The target score for, I would say, an Ivy League school, and this is a rough approximation. This is not the end all be all. Would be like a 1550 and up SAT or a 32 plus ACT would probably be the best range for that. And my biggest piece of advice for preparing for those tests would just be to take a lot of practice tests. The SAT has a lot of practice tests on College Board, there's ACT practice tests around. You can just do like a cursory Google search will get you a lot of good resources and materials. And I'm not the biggest expert on where to find these resources, so a good place to go is your teachers, consulting your peers, and even a guidance counselor would be a good resource for you. So for extracurriculars, a lot of the extracurriculars I did fell into two main categories, which were music and then science, because I play the violin and I play the piano, and that was a lot of source of my, outside of academics, outside of STEM participation in community events and stuff like that. A big piece of advice I would have for you, especially if you have like multiple areas of interest like I had in music and then biology, is just to not overload yourself with, extracurriculars, because you've heard this saying all the time, quality over quantity. It's better to participate really, really heavily and really be passionate about one or two clubs than take as many as you can and kind of only go to one meet for each, which is, I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of what I did in freshman year, and it didn't work out for me because I wasn't passionate about any of the things I did. I was joining these clubs because I was like, oh, I have to get into a college. But you really have to get yourself out of that mindset and just find one or two clubs that you really feel yourself being passionate about. You can commit to them, because a lot of what schools look for is just consistency. They want to see that you can stick with something and really be passionate about something over a long period of time. Another good thing to watch out for is variety and specificity. So there are three main categories of extracurriculars that I tend to see in high school. There's the arts and music type, there's the STEM academic type, and then there's like the sports / teams type, right? And it's generally good in my experience to have like two of these areas at least. Although this is a rough guideline, you don't have to. None of this is the end-all be-all. You'll find that a lot of people in places like Yale have so many different backgrounds, did so many different things than you would, expect. This is just a guideline that I'm giving you guys from my experience and what I did in high school. So for myself, for example, I spec mostly into like the arts with my music and, GBYO, Great Buffalo Youth Orchestra, doing a lot of chamber music workshops around, and also academics and science, which I did Science Olympiad, I did a little bit of research, just stuff like that. If I may use David as an example, he has a lot of sports. He plays tennis, and he also is very academic. He does all kinds of like math and science stuff. So generally what I see is the most successful, I use that word lightly, students have at least two of these categories covered and they're very passionate about it. And especially I can speak a lot to STEM majors because my intended major is biomedical engineering. A big part of your resume as a STEM student is research and your internships. So you have to start looking into those really early, and this is like the most concrete piece of advice I'll give all of you guys if you're planning on going into STEM, is start looking into research and start looking into internships very early. And because, as was said before by David, research is a long process. It takes a long time to secure an internship, write an application, make your CV, make your resume, stuff like that. So start looking into that early so you can have these credentials by the time you're applying to a college. So leadership, Amber, I hope you don't mind me using our picture from Sile here. So leadership, a lot of it comes from extracurriculars that are done through the school, like Stuco, class office, or club leaderships. I know a lot, like student council stuff, like large positions like class office are very hard to obtain, so my advice would be to focus on something small that you're passionate about, like I did for Science Olympiad. I was the academic captain for the Willie's Science Olympiad team in my senior year, and that was something I was really passionate about, that I cared about, and I was involved in organizing meetings and directing stuff at the competition and stuff. So just find something that you're actually really passionate about and consider yourself contributing creatively. One big piece of advice I would have about this as well is just not to be a collector. There are some people who think that if they get a lot of leadership positions, that's like the end, right? You can just collect a bunch of leadership positions and the colleges will accept you and you don't really have to do anything. But that kind of defeats the purpose of a leadership position. The most important part of being a leader in a club is just to contribute creatively, step up when it's needed and go the extra mile. And obviously having more of these leadership, things under your belt kind of undermines that for each. So focus, be specific, and don't be surface level with these kinds of things, because colleges again look for continuity and specificity and passion, and not just sheer variety and numerical force. And then finally, your essay. This is probably something that might scare a lot of people. It scared me. I started my essay brainstorming very early in the, June before my senior year. So you should start this as early as you can. Just brainstorm story ideas, like ideas of a narrative that you could write, a pivotal transformation in your life, a time where you realized something that you didn't realize before, or saw something firsthand that you had only heard about, or something like that. Just think of your ideas, and then, because you have these memories, a story will follow from these ideas that are important to you. And of course, you've heard this as well, show, don't tell. A narrative is about description and not about, dry retelling of events. You have to really put your own kind of personal flair, your personal experience into your essay. So you really have to kind of flesh it out with some creativity, if I'll say that. It's been a while since I wrote my essay, forgive me. A lot of the supplementals, pretty much every college that you will apply to has like a YS supplemental, which was always kind of tricky for me. You should really start by researching your school, and if you know a current student or an alum from that school, you should contact them, ask about their experiences, and that could be kind of your get your foot into the door kind of thing with the YS essay. But again, these essays they're important, yes, but they're really just a way for the school to see what kind of a person you are, how you contribute to your community, and really what your values are, and what kind of a person you would be and how you would fit into their school. So think of it more as a reflection of yourself and not an advertisement. It should not be an advertisement. I think I forgot to add a slide about my current experiences at Yale, but at Yale in particular, there is a lot of emphasis on this idea of embracing right? And that means being able to do multiple things at once and pursue multiple passions at once. Like, I still play violin, I love to play the violin, but I'm majoring in biomedical engineering. So what I'm doing is I'm in a lot of music clubs, I play chamber music outside of class, I'm planning on taking